Welcome to SOI's Iceland expedition. As part of our journey, we attended the Arctic Circle Assembly, the largest international gathering on Arctic policy. Our team got to connect with some of the delegates from the United States in attendance and discuss the impact of the conferences from an international collaboration lens. Let's join in and hear some of the possibilities for youth leadership in climate action in the near future.
And really excited to be connecting with some of the youth delegation from Students on Ice. And we're just curious to know some of your perspectives about the changing Arctic and ways that you might want to engage on climate solutions, ways that you might see moving forward.
As an Indigenous person myself, I think it's really important that we listen to the Indigenous elders because they are the knowledge holders. And once they're gone, if the information is not passed down, then it's lost. And so they are forever, they have been the professionals for this thing. So I think it's really important that we connect them, and especially connect them with youth, because the youth are now going to be our future. So I think that's a really important connection.
To kind of build off what Misty is saying too, I think just like this event, having a space where youth can be part of the dialogue and conversation is really important. And myself being born and raised in Whitehorse, there's not a lot of technical knowledge or capacity in the North right now. So we're relying on a lot of organizations and experts in these areas from other countries and Southern Canada to kind of come up and share that knowledge. And that can be really difficult because there's that knowledge sharing, but sometimes it's a one-way street. So being able to build that capacity in the North, I think long-term is a great solution to kind of working towards resolving some of these issues that we face.
What would be a good way of doing that? Because it's really, I think it's such an important thing that we oftentimes have certain clusters of technical expertise, and especially when you go into maybe the Arctic, and also especially when you go out into the ocean, there's oftentimes a lot of technical and financial resources needed. How can we foster this engagement to really bring people into this without having to replicate all this equipment effort 3 times over?
Personally for me, I'm from Labrador, so it's northeastern Canada, and so we have a little bit more than even Nunavut and more north communities have, but training our own would be very beneficial, and bringing it to the youth in those communities, because there's limited access to pretty much anything. And so bringing a school, allowing them to do their schooling in things that surround us and being able to implement it in their own communities.
Yeah, many of the existing financial institutions, I can only speak to Canada here, but the valuation criteria for investment is so strict, right? So they're looking to de-risk their own assets and their own equity, but they have to kind of open that up and say, okay, this is, in a lot of cases, it's innovative, whatever's happening in the North, and they need to be able to kind of have some gray zone in that to say, we realize that this might not be our standard investment that we would make as, a Big Four bank or a venture capitalist firm or something, but we need to be okay with a little more risk in order to be able to open up that dialogue and those opportunities, for sure.
So one idea that, and I've worked in various innovation organizations over the years, and what I find important is really that we really share the state of the art, that really groups that are engaging maybe a little bit more newly in that space, that they don't reinvent the wheel, but learn from what has already been done and finding good ways of communicating the state of the art. And I think that might be an opportunity for closer communication, bringing people to explain what it is, because it's not just important to get different communities engaged. So even sometimes you want to engage new disciplines, for example, in technology, but you again don't want them to go through like the 10, 20-year learning process, but just accelerate that learning by articulating the state of the art and maybe better posing the questions as well, that more people can work on the answers.
Yeah, and it's interesting, just even, we've been here for the last 7 days exploring Iceland with students on ice on this expedition, and being born and raised in Northern Canada, I really only knew about Northern Canadian issues, right? And so coming here and experiencing and hearing about from our tour guide, like the same issues that they face with transportation and energy generation, and even things as like, medical that we face in Northern Canada, there's so many similarities and parallels that are drawn literally because of this parallel that we're on this world. So to kind of echo your point, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think it's a lot more of like, let's share the information we have and the communication, and let's just work towards the solution together, right?
Yeah. And that's why I think like relationship building is so important too, because it shouldn't be a competition. We all have the same goal in mind, so collaborating and like sharing everyone's knowledge seems to be the way to go.
What would be useful is there's always a lot of excitement when you are together in an event like this, and carrying this excitement and motivation forward into over the next year, or whenever you have another opportunity to come together like that. Have you seen opportunities what would work well for that, to maintain the relationships that you have formed, the continued work on that?
I think the relationship building is consistency. You can't just go somewhere one time and expect to have that relationship built. Like the same as like, your personal life for relationships, you still have to build up on them. And a one-time deal is not going to consistently do that.
Yeah, I think frequent touch points, right? Yeah. Like an event like this, the Arctic Circle Assembly, it almost needs like these smaller modular touch points, like every quarter or something, to say, here's the big granddaddy of events that's going to happen, but okay, here's these other seminars or online sessions. Like the world's online now, right? Why don't we have these conferences, have these quarterly, and you can reconnect with the people. You can say, hey, Mark, how's it been? What have you been working on over the last 3 months? And maybe continue those dialogues. So it's not just seeing those same people 365 days later and saying, we were going to connect and do this and we never did, right? So,
yeah, that's one of the things we're trying to think about with the work that we're doing at Ocean Visions, is like, how do you build community around some of these topics, and like try to bring people together without also having it be the need to like hire a whole other person who like that's their only focus, which we might not be able to have capacity to do that. But also, fighting like Zoom fatigue, right? But also realizing that, like you're saying, that there are these people across the Arctic that have very similar concerns, very similar like realities and things that they're working on. So you want to bring those people together, and unfortunately, it's like great that we do have, I guess, the capabilities that we do, but also like, so many meetings.
But with the North as well, like there's also a limit to like internet and things like that in some places, so that can be a little tricky too.
Yeah. I guess I'll pose a question to you two. So, we're representing a youth delegation here at Arctic Circle Assembly, but what are your organizations doing to make that space for, let's say, the younger generation, the people like us that are maybe starting our professions or getting our feet under us? How are you guys supporting the youth in your spaces?
So I work for an organization called Ocean Visions. It's a nonprofit that works on ocean-based climate solutions. And I'm actually pretty new to the organization. I just started in February, and I left a career as a university professor So I worked, with students and research and mentoring and teaching for a long time, but ultimately felt like I wanted to work more on solutions. But because of my lens of being a university professor and like really loving working with young people and supporting them, that's something that's really important to me. And so that was a big part of putting this sort of community building lunch event together, was also to try to bring different youth together, because I think it's also really important that maybe my role is more as a facilitator to bring different youth together, because I think that a lot of these things are going to be need to led by youth. Like it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be the older generation's decision about how we move forward.
And in our case, we support a lot of research, but also a lot of startup companies. And that is still a world that I wouldn't want to say dominated, but there's a lot of engagement. You have a lot of graduate students. But even in startups, you have a lot of young people that are joining them right out of college or right out of their graduate school. And I think having this energy and this perspective, and I think it's not just energy, it's like the level of belief that this is what we have to do and the passion behind it. I think it's infectious, and I think we fully recognize that we want to support that. But at the same time, this event here, I think, is another reminder to maybe seek out this element even more strongly and maybe at an even younger stage.
Thank you so much for coming, for being here, for braving. There's this windy, rainy weather, and it was really great to meet you both.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for making the space, as always, for youth and meaningful dialogue, right? And kind of building off what you were saying about, I think I really appreciate that you're saying allowing the youth to create their own solutions and to facilitate that. I think that's really important too. So